All right, we're live. All right, so Akash, go ahead and ask Jeremy your questions.
Yeah. So, Jeremy, I want to know, did you become a consequentialist first or a vegan first?
Uh, Definitely a consequentialist first. Maybe it's become clearer in my mind in the same process as I've been a vegan. But no, I've only been vegan for around 5.5 or 6 years. Uh, I think unless you're talking in the sense that Carson has kind of introduced of a philosophical vegan, somebody who realizes that the arguments for veganism, for ethical veganism, are extremely strong, and most of the objections are are flimsy. Um, then then it might be the case that they came about at the same time. But I don't want to say that at all. I was a very heavy meat eater who would accept that vegans were making the better philosophical argument for a very long time, for maybe 20 years.
I don't want to
So
hijack the conversation, but you brought something up that makes me want to throw out something. So veganism is a philosophy, but it's also actions, and consequentialism is a philosophy that can come with actions. Would you say that? Do you think it's reasonable, like even if you're not telling people like that are philosophically vegan, that you're not going to give them the label? Would you say that if somebody that was a consequentialist did actions once a week, once a month that were non-consequentialist actions, um, that would make them somewhat not a consequentialist?
uh,
Because yeah, I think
no,
that's kind of interesting to like if somebody was just like, no, I eat meat all the time, I'm not a vegan, but philosophically I am, and I wonder how that would change for consequentialists.
no, I think that's a great point, Carson. Yeah, they're quite different in that regard. I I don't think we usually need this term philosophical vegan. And in certain conversations it might be useful, especially talking about our past. But I like using words in their normal natural language use as they've developed. I don't really care much about arguments over the precise correct definition of veganism. I think using it in a way that corresponds to normal people's usage is the clearest way to communicate. And as it stands, veganism is a combination of a set of ethical positions and a personal decision to live by them, I would say. So
Gotcha.
it's a combination of the ethical beliefs about what's morally better or worse, and also the personal willpower to follow it. So you could compare it to something like beliefs, like a fitness program for health, or belief about the the best the best way to get an education, or a million other sort of uh, non-moral ways that one could believe something about better or worse. I so being in better or worse physical shape is, I think, a non-moral. It's not inherently a moral difference, but it's something that somebody could have beliefs about. You could have beliefs about what sorts of things make people physically stronger, what the best workouts are, and then you could have different levels of personal motivation or willpower to follow through. And so veganism, the way we normally use the word, is the combination of both. It's people who both have this set of judgments about right and wrong, consuming the treatment of non-human animals, and then also people who have have been able to apply it in their personal lives, who have the willpower, motivation, or the techniques to actually follow through on what they believe. Where
Yeah.
consequentialism, broadly, it's just the former. It's just a set of beliefs about what makes
Yeah.
things morally better or morally worse. It doesn't. Saying that somebody is a consequentialist doesn't say, I think, at all, how much personal motivation they have to make
Yeah.
make moral rightness a factor in how they live their lives.
Like if later today you actually come across a trolley car, but you don't pull that lever, you can still call yourself an act utilitarian, even if you don't act upon it yourself. That is your philosophy. Yeah,
I
I
think
think
so.
you're right, and I get it.
As long as I'm honestly in the conversation going to admit that I did something
Did the wrong
clearly
thing.
morally
Yeah,
wrong or morally worse in that case.
definitely.
And
Yeah.
it comes with the territory as an ethical consequentialist,
Mm-hmm.
that at least the scalar one, who believes everything about moral rightness and wrongness is on a continuum, with infinity on either end. That I think I do lots of things that are morally worse than what I could have done all the time. The clearest example, comes from the most famous example, at least, Peter Singer's argument about charity, that not donating our money to solve the or to reduce the greatest examples of suffering in the world, and instead spending it on our hobbies or on trivial things, is morally similar to allowing a child to drown in front of you in a pond because you don't want to ruin your new shoes, and you or you're in a hurry to go to some place that you like to be.
Yeah, I
and
actually
and,
have
and
a.
we all do that all of the time. We all fail to live our lives in ways that take care of the greatest suffering that currently exists on earth, and instead
Yeah.
prioritize things that are trivial by comparison.
Yeah,
And
I have a few thoughts on that, and I'll bring those up later. I don't want to take up too much of the time, but yeah, Akash, what was your next question?
Right. So I have been vegan far, I think, lesser than anybody else here. So that's been lesser. I mean, less than a year since I've turned vegan. And I remember one of the earlier conversations, I mean, chats I had with Jeremy. I had said that uh, mistakenly, I believe now, that if you are utilitarian, uh, at some point you will face a situation where you might not be a vegan. And I think, Jeremy, you had replied saying that you do not foresee that ever happening. Is that right?
I think if you're not talking about thought experiments and you're talking about the real world,
Yes, real world.
then yeah, it doesn't seem likely that would ever happen, that I would be personally motivated to do things that I would clearly call non-vegan. You can come up with endless versions of the trolley problem, where
Yeah, yeah.
the vegan trolley problem I talked with Jerome about once on his channel. I think I've heard someone else talking about it. I can't remember where. The vegan trolley problem, I think, is some big carnist figure makes you an offer.
Yeah.
Joe Rogan, I think I said, Joe Rogan says, Akash, look, you want to do the most good for the animals. If you eat this cow burger right now, then I'm committed. I'm committing myself that I'll eat plant-based meals for the next 10 meals instead of my normal meals that are heavy with animal products. So significant numbers of animal products will be saved by doing this. And I think like the trolley problem, like versions of the trolley problem, people can bring in their other real world intuitions and say, if that happened in the real world, then what Joe Rogan would be probably trying to do is get some clips where he could make fun of vegans and veganism and try to convince his viewers that veganism is a joke, and in the process cause a lot more animals to be killed and tortured. So we have this intrusion of our real world intuitions there. But if it were in isolation, then it would be like a trolley problem, and the morally better thing for a vegan to do would be to save the damage done by 10 meals with animal products rather than one, by taking the guy's deal, and somehow, no matter how disgusting it might seem to eat animal products, from sentient animals, because in the process you're saving more. You're doing the best. You're doing the best, making the best choice available to you for the animals by taking that deal.
Well, and a deontologist should, the way that people standardly use deontologists, when, at least in the YouTube vegan community, they should also take that. Because it's not like the trolley car in the sense that, would you kill an innocent to save more people? It's this many this many burgers will put this in demand. So if you eat this one, therefore he doesn't eat this 10. Less are in demand, but you're not killing an innocent animal to save others. So with the trolley car problem, if there was 5 cows and 1 cow, I would not kill 1 cow to save the 5. I would, in the hypothetical world, eat the burger though, and I think it's very different.
Okay, well, what if they're different products, Carson?
In the sense that they are already, the meat already exists and it's about putting in demand, I view that as different, because you're not killing an innocent to save a larger number. You are eating one of what puts something in demand to put less in demand.
What if it's, what if they're animals on Garland's farm or whatever, and and Joe Rogan is like, you can kill and eat this. If you kill and eat this duck, then I'm not going to kill and eat 10 chickens.
Okay, so that would be the trolley car problem. I would have issues, but I don't know what I'd do.
And I don't have to kill it. I just have to tell Garland to go out and kill it, right?
Yeah. I guess I would want to know, like, within a hypothetical, if I could know a lot, I'd want to know, is this animal going to die no matter what? Because if it's dying no matter what, then the interesting thing is we want its flesh to go to waste, because its flesh going to waste shows the demand isn't there. So if it's dying, it in a sense doesn't matter. We just don't want to show a dollar value make up for what died. So that's kind of what changes it. But if it's like, okay, this will stay free range until enough demand is there, I wouldn't want to put the demand in to make it die a day early. So that would be more of a challenge for sure.
I mean, I guess we could keep it similar to the original trolley problem, the same original trolley problem. And
yeah, 5 cows and 1 cow. I let the 5 die.
Of course, I'm going to make the same, the non-speciesist same decision with non-human animals as with humans. It's better to pull the lever and have one innocent non-human animal die than to choose to not pull the lever and take the action of choosing to stand there while not pulling the lever and actively stand with your arms at your sides and choose to watch the 5 die rather than the 1, which is what it is.
Yeah, you might convince me someday, but I'm not convinced yet. But Dillian in the comments says, are the chickens going to a sanctuary, or are they going to replace meals? Are they going to replace meals with plant-based meals?
Look, I don't know. We don't have to try to keep modifying this kind of version of the trolley problem. I give the same answer for non-human animals as for human animals, which is that if they're otherwise identical, it's better to make the choice to have one die rather than 5 die. And
Hypothetically, but not in real life, right?
if some deontologist would call me a non-vegan because it was my hand on the lever making the choice to have one chicken get run over by the trolley rather than 5 chickens, pretending that I'm not making a choice because my hand didn't touch the lever. If somebody is going to call someone who touched the lever a non-vegan, and somebody who stood there watching without touching the lever while 5 died a vegan, then I guess that would make me a non-vegan in the non-human animal trolley problem. But when somebody is inclined to do that sort of thing, I can tell a pretty good story why they are the non-vegan. In retaliation, I don't see the useful point of doing that honestly and fairly, but I get angry at people who because of their normative ethical position, deontologists like to accuse consequentialists of being fundamentally non-vegan when it's the deontologist who's defending the choice that's worse in its likely consequences for the non-human animals. And if somebody else wants to keep throwing around the term non-vegan, then at some point I just say, you're the one who took the gloves off and
that's the beauty of
and
my
offered
form of veganism.
the bare knuckle fight. Then I think that I can hold my own and fight back.
For sure. Hey, just to clarify real quick, and this might be a question that Akash should have anyways, but you feel that this is morally what one ought to do, but you wouldn't actually do it, correct? Like in real life.
Pull a lever that causes one chicken to die rather than not pull it and watch 5 chickens die?
Correct.
I'm pretty sure I would do that in a heartbeat.
Interesting. Okay, then, but obviously you wouldn't do that with humans.
If I may interject, Carson, I think he finds it morally preferable, right? Because it's scalar. It's not about right or wrong. It is the morally most preferable choice to pull the lever. So
but my concern, because I agree, the best moral outcome is the one dying over the 5. I think it's kind of complicated, but that's why I view consequentialism as more of almost always a thought experiment. In real life, so with humans, you would not do that. Here in the U.S., you're in California right now.
Wait, I didn't say that.
No, I'm asking you: would you kill an innocent person to save 5 in real life? And would going to jail for life affect your choice?
Well,
no, that's an added constraint, right?
That's right. The consequences are dramatically changed by the existence of law, and that's if somebody is making that part of their answer to the trolley problem, then they're not really talking about the trolley problem. They're letting real world considerations intrude, because if the consequences are because of our present law, one person dies, and Jeremy, the agent, spends the rest of his life in prison, or
to save 5 people,
or five people die, and Jeremy gets to
so you wouldn't sacrifice your time out of jail for 4 lives?
There's different sets of consequences. Well, I probably should.
Actually, I have a question.
I almost certainly should. It would be better. It would be better because I have I have a presumption that those people, assuming they're around the same age as me or younger or whatever, are going to have more net value in their lives. I think but then when you add in the extra personal sacrifice to myself, then you're really imbalancing the trolley
No,
problem.
it's
And
tricky.
then
Would you do it in real life if you could get away with it? You could see magically that no cop will ever find out, but it was
Well,
just 5 innocent people were going to be hit by a thing. If you do it, you are making it hit the other one, but nobody ever has to know.
Yes, I think so, and I'll say this because this is very important, Carson.
Okay.
I could be a bystander who's not psychologically prepared to do the right thing. Okay, but sometimes when you think about the trolley problem, you think about like somebody who's kind of standing by the switch, somebody who's involved in the operation of the trains, and if I wasn't able to make that morally superior decision psychologically, then I shouldn't be in charge of the levers in the station room. And I've said this numerous times. I don't want actual deontologists in charge of anything important. I don't want them in charge of setting the traffic policy. I don't want them in charge of setting the medical safety rules, or the the amount of safety testing that has to be done before drugs are approved, before medications are approved in a nation. It needs to be done by hard-headed consequentialists who are able to get over the hesitation and the fear that there is going to be death on one side or the other of the decision, and make the superior decision.
Do you personally think it should be in law that the best action a police officer could do in that situation would be to kill the innocent person to save the 5?
Given the constraints of these kind of problems, they're all the same. If
there's a hostage situation, sorry to cut you off, but if there's a hostage situation and somebody said, I'm going to kill these 5 people in this building unless you kill that random innocent stranger across the street watering her garden. We don't need to know any other facts about the people. I already said her, so we'll say the 5 innocents are hers as well. They're all the same age. We don't need to know anything else. Do you think the best law should be, I guess it wouldn't be law, the best anyways, we'll say law, is that the police officer, not the best choice, but the best legally enforced for their duty, the job of the police officer? Should they know that, yes, okay, that guy said if I kill this one, they'll be let go. We have a minority report thing where we can see into the future and we know he actually will let them go. With the knowledge that that person will let the 5 go, do you want to live in a world where the cop will kill that innocent person watering her garden?
Well, see, that's the thing. This is the exact same thing that Matthew told you. Matthew from Bentham's Bulldog yesterday, I think. I'm going to say the exact same thing. Okay.
Oh, okay. That was what I was hoping for, right?
Okay. Good, but you're not asking the trolley problem choice. When you're asking, what rules would I want to live in a society that has? You're introducing all of these other considerations that we know in the real world about what future terrorists will do. For example, you save.
That makes it the trolley car problem.
No, it doesn't, because people are not deliberately putting 5 people onto one track and creating a runaway trolley in order to get one person who they want killed. But if you have a policy for police that whenever a terrorist credibly says, I will kill 5 people if and only if, you don't kill this one specific person, then the police have as their duty and their training the response of killing the one person that the terrorist chose, then you're creating an incentive for lots and lots of future terrorists to use as a means of getting the one person who they want killed.
Let me fix it then. There's a building on fire. There's 5 innocent people in there. There's a helicopter that has this huge thing full of water. It's going to fly over, dump the thing on the fire, and let's just say we happen to know that the amount of water in there is the amount of water to put out that size of fire, and the 5 haven't died yet. One of the innocent workers in the helicopter gets somehow something on their suit gets stuck to where they know we can't get this unstuck. We can drop the water with this dude. Dude's going to die from the fall, but the water's going to put out the fire and we're going to save 5 innocent people. But we have to knowingly drop this water while this innocent worker is stuck to it. Do you think the protocol should be it doesn't matter, let it fall, or we won't kill an innocent person even though we want to save these people from this natural occurring accident?
I mean, they're the real world consequences that would speak against that kind of protocol. They might have something to do with the psychology of the bonding between people in this profession or something like that. They might have to do with the ability to hire people into that profession.
Yeah, that's true.
They want to know that they at least have the right to protect themselves and their friends in certain circumstances like that, rather than strangers. But again, there's no reason morally, I think, unless the people in the fire somehow, caused it themselves, or just are the kinds of people who are less valuable than the firefighter. Because this is kind of hard thing to say. Some humans are more valuable than other humans, but as a matter of fact, they are. If you have, not in the sense that their suffering is less important, but in the sense that some people have much greater potential for instrumental effects in society than others. So, you might not want to lose a firefighter, especially, in sort of massive emergency situations. There are going to be a lot of cases where you don't want to lose this valuable trained firefighter or trauma surgeon or whatever, to save.
Part of it could be the opposite too, though.
Two random people.
Part of it could be that we view police officers and firefighters as willing to save their lives. So since they put their life on the line and accept the job, maybe in a more utilitarian world, they have to sign a paper at the beginning saying that their lives might be sacrificed intentionally or something. But I have a couple follow-ups, but I'm going to save them for later because I think Akash had something on this same line of questioning.
Akash, could you guys just wait a second? My coffee mug is right over there. I'm just going to be right back.
Yeah,
okay?
Go for it.
Absolutely.
Can you send some coffee to me through the computer?
I'll do my best.
I need it. Yeah. So Akash, what are your thoughts on what Jeremy or what we both just said?
That's the thing, right? If there is a hypothetical, then it is happening in a vacuum. The moment we start adding constraints that what is going to happen in real life, then my next question was going to be how many constraints will you consider, and temporally how long you will consider, not constraints, I mean, if you're considering the consequences of your action, the question is how long in the future will you keep in mind to assign the value to your decision. I mean, is it 1 year, 2 years, is it forever? And also the scope, how many people are there in your definition of consequential, how many people. We obviously are vegans, so our moral scope will include human animals and non-human animals, right?
Gotcha.
So yeah, I'll just ask Jeremy the question, right?
Yeah.
So so let's say there's a real life trolley problem. I'm not talking about a hypothetical, right? You actually have to decide between 1 and 5. So my question is, as a consequentialist, and I just for my understanding's sake, I would just correct me if I'm wrong, because consequences means you are evaluating your actions based on the consequences. What are all the factors that you will take into account before making a decision on what to do with the lever?
What are all the factors that I would take into account?
Yeah, my question is for any decision, but since we are talking about the trolley problem, if there is such a if the only addition I would like to give you is you have the capacity of knowing everything possible about all these people. So, what are the factors you will take into account before making a decision?
Are you talking about versions of the trolley problem where the people differ from one another in some way?
I don't know because my thing is when
Like,
I'm
do you take that into account how they differ? Like, would you take age into account if the one person was 6 months
Okay.
old and everybody else was 90 years
So,
old, that kind of thing?
yeah, the very first thing to say is, I mean, this is a very, very different kind of ethical consideration from the original trolley problem. The original trolley
yes,
problem
definitely.
is just meant to establish whether you think that there's some kind of active-passive distinction. So the original trolley problem, it deliberately keeps the people identical in all ethical respects that you can determine, and the point of that is just to be able to test whether somebody thinks that it's the consequences of your decision that matter, which I very clearly do, no doubt about it, or whether you know, people who say this don't see it that way, but I see it as using ridiculous linguistic kind of distinctions without a difference between the choice to pull the lever and the choice not to pull the lever. They call it an action versus a non-action, or they call it killing one person versus letting nature take its course, and other what I consider to be really ridiculous linguistic distinctions. I call them magic words between
Just
two
to interrupt,
choices.
I firmly believe that not pulling is also a positive action compared to pulling. I don't have any such confusions in my mind, right? Both are choices that you have made, and both are positive. It's like that earthquake problem, right? If I can decide not to move, but an earthquake can happen, I can fall on somebody, and then so it's something like that. So
Well,
I do
a
not
good
believe.
counter. Sorry, I was going to say a good counter to those people, which I am one of them, but this counter wouldn't work on me. But for most of them, if they say that it's just letting nature take its course, you could say, okay, well, what if you were just standing there and there was no other track, a train was going to hit 5, and you could just pull it to save them? It's you wouldn't let nature take its course; you would just pull it to save them. You're truly just deciding over the personal action of switching up what is taking its course.
But I imagine a lot of those people, Carson, would say, a lot of those action, inaction, or active passive deontologists would say that even though it would be bad to stand there and not pull the lever and watch the 5 people die when you could have put it on the sidetrack with no people on it, that it would be a lot worse for them, or somehow categorically worse than if the train was going onto the track with 0 and somebody pulled it to put it onto the track with 5.
Interesting. Yeah.
So
Jeremy, would you agree with me that? Sorry, go on.
Okay. Oh no. So yeah, I think they would still say that they would no longer say that it was perfectly acceptable to let nature take its course and kill 5 people rather than 0, but they would also say that it would be a very importantly different kind of badness for somebody to pull the lever to put the trolley onto the 5 people, rather than really merely fail to take it off the track with 5 people.
Yeah, for sure.
So would you agree with this statement that? Sorry, Carson, can I complete the question?
My follow-up was actually just in line with your questioning, but you're here, so you might as well ask it.
Yeah. So I firmly believe that, would you agree with this statement that not pulling the lever is not analogous to allowing somebody to die as against doing active harm? I think in both the cases you are actually doing. If you do not decide to pull the lever, you are actually intentionally again causing harm to those 5. And if you are actively pushing the lever, then you're intentionally causing harm to the 1. Would you agree with this statement?
I mean, both cases are actions in the same sense.
Yes.
both cases are choices over possible states of the world that you could knowingly bring about, and acting on a choice. Yeah, whether your hand is physically touching a lever and moving it, or remaining down at your side with the lever in front of you. If you knowingly have the ability to bring about one state of the world rather than another, you're choosing the first state over the second.
Carson, do you agree with this?
Would you word it also as you actively killed the 5? If I don't pull the lever and I let nature take its course, are you saying I'm actively killing the 5?
Well, I wouldn't normally word it with the word active, because active is a completely useless, magic word in that circumstance.
Well, yeah, my counter to that was going to be, okay, so if I let it kill the 5 and instead of switching to the 1, you could say that. But if there was 100 on the other track, you would let it stay on that track. So whatever you're calling letting kill the 5, I must not consider that bad, because many people would let it kill 5 over 100, but many might let it kill 1 over 5. So
I guess,
yes, you are making a choice no matter what, but your choice is to be inactive, and I do that all the time.
Yeah. So this is another way to put it. Yeah, we can use
the point is the choice is also an action, right?
The point is that the choice is morally relevant. So we could use the words like active or inactive in a like a bodily, like physiological sense. We could talk about the physiology of my muscles consuming energy to pull the lever versus conserving energy and being at my side. We could talk about motions of my body, or we could talk about the mechanical movements of the lever. Something changes in the track when the lever is pulled. Something doesn't change in the track when somebody leaves the lever there. So you can talk about the human physiology or the mechanics of the track in terms of active and inactive. But so another way to put it is just that all of those distinctions are not morally relevant at all.
Yeah,
they don't. There's not a good argument for them to be morally relevant.
Yeah, I guess I just see a difference. Let's say even out in nature, no laws, no nothing. You got a group of 5 people and one person over here, and this lion that somehow I can communicate with is going to go and eat these 5 people. If the lion's on his way to do that, I can see a thing above him, because I'm magical, that says that that's his destination. And then if I could say to him, hey, there's one person over there, would you be up for eating that one person if that fills you up the same amount? I would not do it. I would not. But if he was coming up and he was going to say, I'm either going to eat that one or these 5, which one should I do? I would say eat the one. I think there's a huge difference. There's a huge difference between something that was not going to happen, making that happen, versus if 2 things are going to happen. If he says, I'm going to kill this one and the 5, you get to pick, though. If you tell me just to get either the 5 or the 1, I'll do that, and that's all I'll do. I'll say the one, obviously the one, but not if it's already taking its course. I think there's a huge difference. Akash, do you think there? I know Jeremy does, but do you think there's a huge difference at all, or a difference at all?
Sorry, can you repeat the last sentence? I lost your audio there.
Oh, just do you think there's a difference?
No, before that.
Oh, I was just saying, like, so I guess and it's the same as the trolley car. Nobody's going to see. There's no society. Nobody knows anything. Do you think there's a difference between if the trolley car was going to somehow hit all of them, and then you get told you can pick which one it goes to, and then you pick 1 instead of 5? That's like you choosing out of 2 options instead of it getting all of them. Do you think there's a difference between picking 1 then, and then if it's on its way to 5 and you deciding that's already where it's going, if I put it over here, I'm killing an innocent person that wasn't going to die, and therefore you let it kill the 5? Do you see a difference between those 2 things?
No.
No? Okay.
No. In the sense that you again put it in a vacuum, right? Hypothetical, where the only thing that I know is that I do nothing and everybody dies. I do something and fewer people die.
Hmm.
Compared to the earlier problem where I choose to do nothing where more people die, and
Hmm.
or I choose to do something where some people die. I don't see any difference because it's for me
Interesting.
it's where it's the choice where which makes the difference. I'm already there. I can either push the lever or not pull the lever. In a
Hmm.
vacuum, I would be hard pressed to argue why one is better than five, or whether even one is preferable to five, considering I
Yeah.
do not know any consequences, which is what my question for Jeremy was. I'll modify it a little bit. So, Jeremy, let's say in the trolley problem, how much knowledge would you feel comfortable in acquiring before you can make a decision about the people on the trolley on the tracks?
I see. I mean,
That was the
it
question.
is, yeah, again, it's very different, very different.
This is not a
From
hypothetical. This is
is it,
real life.
this is no longer an argument uh, between consequentialism
No.
and
It is
the
it is
ontology.
actually asking you how a consequentialist will live in his day-to-day life.
It's asking sort of a question within consequentialism about
Yes.
the value of different lives. I
Could I
imagine
ask you
you're going to
a
go to the
question
difference between.
could I ask you a question that might help you, like on your way to answering it? Like, one thought I have on that exact question is, would you care more about knowing stuff about the people that you're choosing between, or their effect on a larger amount of people? Would you want to know if the one has a bazillion family members that are going to be sad if they die, where the five have no family members? Or would you care more about like the age and the actions of the actual individual people?
Yeah, that's a great point, because that seems to be one of the largest differences between human and non-human animals in terms of what a consequentialist will consider or ought to consider.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that humans vary so much more in their second order and higher order effects on others. You might expect one chicken versus another chicken to have roughly the same, not only individual experiences based upon their age, but also different consequences toward other beings that they interact with. Whereas humans can vary widely, and not only can not only can humans vary widely in their positive, indirect, and higher order effects on others by things like their career. So, a scientist who, maybe an agricultural scientist who's able to develop crops in the future that allow many more people to be fed, versus somebody who works in some kind of entertainment field, or either that, or just doesn't have the intelligence to do anything that's very useful to too many others. Not only do we vary in our capacity to do good, but we also vary in our personalities and our tendency to do good. So humans can be just vastly destructive toward others, uh, in a way that non-human animals are much more consistent across within a species and even across species in the sort of higher order effects that their individual lives are going to have.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think it's very reasonable to say what you suggested, Carson, that a person's um a person's capacities to affect important change, and a person's disposition toward making the world better versus making the world worse are probably going to be much more important in comparing one life against another than the first order effects of say how old someone currently is, how much life they likely have ahead of them, how much happiness or suffering they're likely to have, their current state of health, and things like this. Those things can differ between different people, but I think those are mostly going to be within a certain limited range. Whereas the difference between the humans who have had the most positive effect on the world outside of themselves and the humans that have had the most negative effects is huge.
Guys, can you give me 5 minutes? I'll be right back.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, you could put whatever names into it,
Mm-hmm.
Normally people would say Mother Teresa and Hitler, but I think actually Mother Teresa of Calcutta was a pretty horrible person who caused a lot of harm to the world.
I've
You can
heard.
look into that if you're interested.
Yeah, I've heard interesting things. Okay, so while Akash is gone, I actually made a note of something I wanted to ask you earlier. I just didn't want to take up all the time of what Akash was doing. My note makes no sense, so I need to remind myself of what it means. I just wrote caused it themselves. I think we were talking about something where, it was a fire. Somebody was in a fire. Do you view somebody's value based on if they are the reason for a thing? Like if you were wanting there to be more or less happiness in the world and so yeah, wanting a larger number of pleasure when you subtract the amount of pain from pleasure. I believe that's how it's often worded for consequentialism. Do you see
that
a
would be
huge difference
hedonism.
between?
I don't want to. I'll talk about
Okay.
that later. Talk about
Do you
that later.
see a huge difference between saving 5 people, or let's say 6 people in a house fire where they were being dumb and drunk and caused the fire themselves, or saving less people, so like 3 people in a fire that was just caused by natural occurrences, like it was hot out and the heat made some forest fire start? Or, I don't know.
Hey guys.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Apurva. I'm Akash's sister, younger sister.
Oh, hello.
He had a bad health episode right now, so he is unable to come back to the stream.
Oh, okay. Oh,
I'm
that's
so sorry
sad.
about that.
Oh, it's all right. I just hope he's better soon. Thanks for letting us know.
Yeah. So I have to leave the studio, I guess. Is that what I have to do?
Yeah, you can just close
To
out of
end
the
the
entire
meeting?
tab. You can just close out of the
Right.
entire tab itself. Yeah. Have a good
Right.
one.
So sorry. Thank you so
Yep.
much.
No,
All right, bye.
I hope he's okay. Oh
That's
man.
a bummer. I don't know too much of his health stuff, but I know that there's a little bit there. Yeah. Okay, well, I'll check back in with him soon.
Yeah. He's,
Yeah. Yeah, that's a bummer. Well, do you want to keep talking about consequentialism
guess
for a
so.
little bit, or?
I guess I'll answer that question and then maybe we can wind it down. But
Yeah.
as there's a psychological answer, and then there's the moral answer, and so it's phrased like that. What would I feel? What would Jeremy, as just a civilian who could do something, or Jeremy the firefighter, kind of think about people who were in a fire that was caused by some kind of understandable accident in the wiring, or versus people who caused the fire through like extreme negligence. And I would have a very different emotional reaction to those two groups of people. That's true. But in terms of what's morally justified, I think that the fact that one of those groups of people caused it through their negligence is only morally relevant insofar as I would predict that they would continue to be negligent in the future, and so that they're
Would that
less,
be enough
less
to push you
valuable
over?
people to have less value if they're if they're less valuable people to have around in the world, which is probably the case, the kind
Would
of
that be
people who
enough
are
to
living
push
their
you
lives in
over?
such a way. Push me over to what?
To saving the 3 instead of the 6, or at least calling that the more moral choice because of the likely future outcomes?
To save 3 people who are living kind of just normally responsible lives, not perfect, but just not engaging in extremely reckless behavior
Yeah.
in a fire that they didn't cause through negligence, versus 6 people who
We'd have to specify that at least 4
get
of the
so
6
drunk and
people
high
were
that
at
they
fault.
cause lots of recklessly cause lots of dangerous situations all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say it's reasonable for somebody to think, especially on a sort of policy making level, that three generally responsible kind of people in the world are more valuable than 6 irresponsible people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, you could even get to the point of thinking that the 6 irresponsible people were a net negative on society, right? So that it would even be worth not having them, even if it wasn't a trade-off against the 3 responsible lives. It would just be better if those 6 like highly irresponsible, damage causing people were just to die than not. There's obviously a point at which humans' existence becomes net negative, and I think there are a lot of net negative lives in the world right now, and that of course doesn't mean that if you see one of those people you should just kill them, and it doesn't mean that certainly
Right.
doesn't mean that we should have a government policy to try to like round up and mass execute people, but just on a moral level, just to say that somebody who's going through their lives so recklessly that driving drunk and high,
Yeah.
risking causing structure fires that kill not only themselves and their housemates but neighbors, cause great cost to firefighters and other kind of public services, to just acknowledge that there are lots of people for whom the world would be a better place if they were just no longer here. That's just
Yeah.
just accepting reality.
Yeah. What if I take the same scenario, but I make it to where they won't affect others? They're only damaging themselves. So instead of the fire situation, let's say 5 people with lung cancer from choosing to smoke after being well aware that smoking is bad for them show up to a hospital, and then somebody else that say it might be too nice to call them a retired firefighter. Let's just say somebody else that they got some lung issues from something else, like that maybe they were in a fire that they did not cause and they didn't do it. They didn't do anything wrong to get their lung cancer, but the other 5 intentionally smoked. And then at this place at this time, they need to give chemo right away to all these people to live. And there's the people that smoked need less chemo. So whatever medicines, whatever amount is able to be given, they have enough that they could give to the one guy that did not cause his own, or that same amount could make all 5 of the smokers. It could fix their situation. Do you think the fact that they knew the risk and they harmed themselves, but they won't be a danger to others, would make you choose the same thing that you chose for the fire?
I think that's a pretty similar answer.
Okay, yeah, I think so for myself too.
It's psychologically reasonable or predictable that I would think about somebody who did this well-known risky behavior.
It's why I'm on the fence with healthcare. I think if we have just free healthcare for everyone, I feel like people that specifically harm themselves should have to pay their bills back. If somebody like smokes and gets cancer, or somebody intentionally like gets hundreds of pounds overweight or something, and therefore they are causing more taxes to be needed for
Well,
something like healthcare.
sure, Carson, a consequentialist ought to say that this kind of thing would be good policy, that market incentives or even quasi-market incentives, markets are probably the best way to align incentives most of the time. That's for the sake of consequences. The reason why you'd want to have that policy, I think, it's not just out of a retributive kind of punishment against the person who made the choices that were known to increase the chance of harm, but it's to disincentivize the behavior and reduce the rate of that negative situation in society, right? So
Yeah.
having smokers or drinkers or overweight people or sedentary people, the ones who have the capacity to choose, have them not be entitled to sort of complete free coverage, medical coverage, is it's I think only morally justified in terms of reducing the suffering in society and increasing the sort of productivity of society through the incentives that it produces. It's not justified solely by the motive of punishing people who brought about the worst situation. I don't think there's a defensible moral justification for purely retributive punishment. But yeah, I would say, as a thought experiment, if one person brought about their lung cancer through smoking and the other had it through no fault of their own, but there was some reason why the first person sort of had a longer expected life or was going to do something more important for the world, then it would still make sense to prioritize the person who's going to have the best future consequences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of the things that I find kind of wild about consequentialism. Like it's not, in a sense, like I don't mind there being a philosophy that's all about thought experiments to help you figure out why you feel different ways. But it seems like the more I talk with people about consequentialism, the main ideas are things that aren't part of real life. I mean, I guess they are, like how you talk about choices that should be made by like police officers and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I
I
guess
think
we just naturally do it, kind of like if we just make good choices for good outcomes. But
I think they pervade real life, and I think that's why I keep bringing up these examples of things that we really don't want deontologists in charge of. I think traffic policy, speed limits, and car design requirements and things like this are the consequentialist thought experiments put into reality. You mandate seat belts in all cars, or let's say airbags. So that's clearer, right? So airbags save a lot of people, and then they kill a lot of people. And but the number of people that they save is quite a bit higher than the number of people that they kill. And these decisions to mandate them, to make it illegal to shut them off or whatever. In many cases, it's a straightforward choice between some set of people dying and some other set of people dying, and it's done based upon hopefully, it's not like I've scrutinized the statistics and these studies, but hopefully it's based upon good science and good statistical interpretation, and
Yeah.
and there's a very high degree of certainty that the current airbag situation is saving many more people than it's killing, but the people that it's killing are different people from the people that it's saving. So there is a trolley problem type structure to it. There are people who are dead because of airbags who would be alive if the airbag was not required to be installed.
I feel like
and the justification for their death is going to be that a lot more people were saved by the airbag.
Yeah, but I feel like it's always going to come down to like man-made things that are privileges, not rights. Where like nobody's born that deserves a car. It's just if your society created cars and then there's roads and there's speed limits or whatever. When it comes to things like taking lives, like killing one to save five or whatever, that's going completely against negative rights. Where anything where I think that we might see consequentialism affecting the law, it's going to be something like where if you have a man-made thing where you can say, what are the outcomes going to be? And then the people that drive are taking this risk. Be a good driver. Hope that you make it home all right. But if you die, it's because we looked at the consequences and we let you make the choice if you want to drive. Same thing with like a gun. If you don't have a gun, you might not be able to protect yourself. If you do have a gun, your kid might shoot themselves. We have this man-made thing, and we have the rules based on looking at the outcomes. And as things change in life, if more people die in school shootings, then there might be more restrictions on guns. And these things that are man-made, I feel like that happens with, but not things where it's actual actions to humans. That's
I'm
just
not
what
sure.
pops
I'm
into my
not
head
sure
right
what
now.
you're not going to consider man-made. Then
Well, the
Like
direct
the
actions.
the
to
hunter-gatherer
humans.
society, and and like they need to catch some animals to be able to for the clan to survive or whatever. And so they have these kind of norms, these kind of habits about when to like throw the spear when they think they see a deer or whatever. And then sometimes they kill a member of their clan or whatever, mistake them for a deer. I mean, we're assuming how like the non-vegan perspective, the deer just has much less worth, which I don't hold, but just for this analogy, because I'm trying to bring it out of the technological frame, right?
Well, I know a good way to do it.
You don't want to have a policy. You don't want to have a policy that or a routine that never ever makes a mistake, because then you're going to starve. So you don't want to have one that's too reckless. And so you have to figure out what the trade-off is going to be. And that's outside of a high technology context, right?
Well, yeah, but like, let's say, so I think it makes sense that you'll always have this with the man-made stuff. But if you take situations like, let's say that for some reason we made it perfectly legal for people to fist fight. Now, hopefully you'll agree with me that, or not to fist fight, but that we make it where it's not illegal to punch strangers in the face that insult you. Somebody talks about your mom and you punch them in the face. We make that not illegal for whatever wild reason. And then right before we're going to make it legal or illegal again, we discover that deaths drop massively. People, if they're able to get aggression out by punching each other, then there's a lot less deaths. Now, in my mind, a desirable society would make it to where you cannot punch people, even if you know punching people releases tension and makes people less likely to go kill people. And so that's why I think it's not involving something man-made. Same thing with slavery. If you have, if for whatever reason all the politicians stop doing anything, we have no laws, and for like 50 years, slavery comes back in. So if you can just take somebody and force them at gunpoint to be your slave, and then we find out that there's more productivity. We have more things are made, and we can see in a big way there's a better world. And if you free those people, will the world, the productivity at least, will, let's say it goes down. I think we should still say, because it's affecting a negative right, you stop the slavery. You don't do the consequentialist thing you do with man-made stuff.
Well, this comes up a lot. I would just say that very plainly, the things that motivate you to come up with the concept of negative right, when you do and apply it when you do, smuggle in consequential considerations of consequences. You know, the reason why you're motivated to call slavery a negative rights violation of beings that have negative rights, and you're not motivated to call the use of a machine in production a violation of negative right, or say that the machine has negative rights, is precisely because you understand that slaves are sentient beings with a high capacity for forms of happiness and suffering, and therefore the fact of being enslaved and everything that's entailed by it in their daily experience is denying them large amounts of happiness and imposing large amounts of suffering, in a way that doesn't happen with like a tractor.
Yeah.
So so it's that very fact, the very different consequences in terms of the very different experiences that are possible for a human who's enslaved versus a piece of machinery is, I think, the very, very reason why the concept of negative rights comes into being in the first place. So you can't really honestly talk about the consequentialist, the consequences of slavery versus the abolition of slavery, in terms of productivity for everybody other than the slaves. You know, it's inherent in, I guess, most forms of consequentialism that you take all of the consequences into consideration, and that very much does include the well-being of people who are enslaved. You know, it's the same thing in veganism. If you ignored all the non-human animals and only talked about the consequences for humans or for the environment insofar as it impacts humans, then you'd come to very different conclusions than we vegans do when we consider the consequences for all sentient beings according to their degree of sentience.
Yeah.
So a lot of these arguments against consequentialism, I think they fail to consider how much consequences are baked into the very formation of the concepts that they're trying to use against consequentialism, such as negative rights. You know, a great example, I think I first read on Bentham's Substack blog is about negative rights, say, is if you walk down a suburban street, say, and you start firing bullets randomly around you, people will call that a negative rights violation. But if you walk down that street and you're talking loudly with your friend, and you're sending sound waves that physically interact with the houses, that's not going to be considered a negative rights violation. And what's the difference between the bullets and the sound waves? Other than
I don't.
other
I
than the
don't know.
fact, well, what is the difference between the
No.
bullets and the sound waves? Just say it. And we'll go from there.
One's man-made.
What?
I mean, the sound waves, you can call that man-made, but I wouldn't consider that made.
Whoa. You're saying
Well, no, I'm
the
agreeing with
reason
you.
why.
I'm agreeing with you that a man. Yeah, no, hold on. I know exactly what you're going to say. I think that we need to have, based on consequences, we need to have laws about man-made things and their outcomes. So if somebody like just firing guns in the forest or whatever, there's never any outcomes. Therefore, there's no laws put into place. As soon as innocent people that are out in the forest going on hikes start getting hit, then you have to have, okay, so now we have this law that you can't just willy-nilly fire guns because we know the outcomes. So yeah, no, I agree with you. I just think it's connected to its man-madeness.
So
did I miss something? I might be wrong. I might have jumped into that too quick.
Sending bullets around you that interact with the houses physically is considered a negative rights violation. Sending sound waves around you that interact with the houses on the street is not considered a negative rights violation. Mm-hmm. And you're saying that the morally relevant difference seems to be that the bullets are man-made?
It's not necessarily the morally relevant difference. I can see that whenever we look at something where the relevant difference is the consequences, it's because it's man-made.
If instead of my speaking to make the sound waves, I was like playing a little like boombox. I wasn't playing it so loudly that it would like burst people's eardrums or like drive them nuts, but I was just playing it kind of moderate volume. And sound waves are physically encountering the houses.
Okay, you got
that's
me.
Man-made too now. Carson, the obvious difference between sending bullets that physically interact with houses and sending sound waves is that bullets can kill and seriously injure people, or at the very least damage their property, and sound waves don't.
No, I agree. I guess I just, when it's a man-made thing, I recognize that why we have restrictions the way we do is for consequentialism reasons, but it's because of their possibilities. Where the other things that I'm referring to, where like if you let people fist fight and then there ends up being less deaths, the reason you still don't let the fist fight happening is because you don't not let it happen because of its potential consequence. It's because it is the outcome. It is the outcome, and it's this negative right issue where with this other one, you're using something man-made that could lead to it, which is why it's kind of wild that you could shoot a gun into a house and get like a week in prison, or you do the exact same thing, but it happened to hit a person. One person shooting a gun into the house isn't worse than another, but if the outcome is a dead person, you're probably in jail a lot longer. And so it's kind of interesting, but we have the laws in place on those things because of their potential outcome, and we live in a society where we want the outcomes to be good. I think consequentialism fits almost everywhere except for when it comes to negative rights, which is why I can't pull the lever.
But again, all the examples like the bullets and the sound waves example where...
Oh, is that it's negative rights? Well, it's because it has the potential of negative rights, right?
If we were to live in a world, if the world were changed such that sound, sort of sound waves above like a kind of very low whisper conversational level, like if they could kill people, then if they were kind of about as damaging as bullets are today, then I think everybody who talks about negative rights would instantly see, speaking loudly or playing your radio loudly on a suburban street to be a negative rights violation instantly, because the thing that triggers the concept of a negative rights violation in the first place has consequences baked right into the cake. You know, the reason why we have the terms that we have for various kind of crimes, various kind of offenses against people is because they have a very high likelihood of causing large negative consequences. That's the reason why, you know, it's the reason why like rape is a concept, and it's a very important concept. And non-consensually tapping someone on the shoulder is not really a concept. We don't have a distinct word for it. You know, the difference between them is not that one's consensual, one's non-consensual. They're both non-consensual. The difference between them is that one is the kind of thing that tends to cause all kinds of significant short and long-term direct and indirect harm to the person that is victimized by it. And the other, it seems like even a joke to call somebody a victim of a non-consensual tap on the shoulder, precisely because despite it being equally non-consensual, we know that its probability of causing any significant harm is extremely low, and even if it does cause some harm, it's going to be a lot less than any other kind of action. So we form these concepts for different kinds of violations because they're things that where the likely consequences are extreme. So almost all of the other words that people want to use instead of directly talking about consequences, which words get chosen, which concepts get developed for which kind of things seem to have consequences baked right in.
Gotcha. You know? Yeah, no, that's that makes sense.
And that's the case in the like the way people respond to the trolley problem. And they want to say like letting 5 people die is different from actively killing one person. The reason why I think that active passive distinction exists for many people is that you know, in the real world, the consequences of people knowing that if they go and shoot their neighbor are going to be severe for them. That's going to be something called murder. That they're going to lose their freedom, maybe lose their life for. The consequences of that are very positive for society, whereas the consequences for saying like every person who didn't donate to charity and save 5 lives, or every person who didn't like become a volunteer firefighter, even though they could have, and save 5 lives somewhere, are that you're going to go to prison for failing to do something that saved 5 lives. The consequences of that would it would be some kind of insane breakdown of society. It's not feasible to put that kind of thing into law, right? So I think the active passive distinction and things like it come out of a consideration of higher order consequences in the real world for trying to put different kind of things into law. But I don't think that escapes consequentialism. I think that these other concepts, they package consequences into sort of intuitive, easily usable form, right? And then they break down. You know, they break down when the consequences are very atypical. You know, it's good that we have this concept of consent in relationships or with physical touching or whatever. But then it breaks down when the idea that everything consensual is morally acceptable and everything non-consensual is morally unacceptable. It breaks down at the extremes. It breaks down when the consequences are atypical. So, if your partner is sleeping and you kiss them on the forehead, then they weren't able to consent to that, obviously, because they weren't conscious, they weren't aware. But almost everybody considers it morally acceptable, morally good. And I think clearly the reason for that is that there's no reason for a normal person to ever expect that there would be negative consequences from that to the other person. And or you see your partner at a party from behind and you come up and like hug them around the waist, unless you know that they have touch related PTSD or something like that. If they're psychologically normal person, then that's going to be good. It's going to produce positive consequences. And so even though it's obviously non-consensual because they weren't aware of the fact that you were there beforehand, our normal intuitions that that's a good thing are because the consequences, like the logic, the reasonable expected consequences are that it will be positive for everybody involved, right? And and so this consent, this wordless concept like consent, that's very useful. It has consequences baked into it. The very reason why we say that non-consensual things are morally wrong in the first place is that it normally causes a lot of harm, short and long-term harm, for somebody to have their preferences sort of bypassed and violated by force, right? Mm-hmm. We know that generally people want and don't want certain things because they have access to their own psychology and they know what's gonna give them happiness or suffering, and then besides that first order effect of when somebody forces like let's just say whenever there's kind of a lack of freedom in society, not only are you taking away people's ability to achieve or hold the things that they personally find more valuable as a first level consequence, but the second order consequence is that you're going to incentivize people to try to find their own ways to get what they want, and then it's going to lead to organized crime, and it's going to lead to other ways of people trying to achieve the sort of personal and political power that was taken away in much more costly ways. All the side effects of people using organized crime to try to get what they wanted instead of just letting them legally get what they wanted in the first place. That's the sort of the consequentialist justification for liberty.
Interesting.
Then I like
think
that. I think consequences are baked into the cake of sort of small L libertarian attitudes that not only people who call themselves libertarians hold, but people who call themselves progressives and socialists and conservatives, they have a lot of these libertarian values too. Like they disagree on certain controversial issues, but they generally believe that people should be able to buy the books that they want or whatever, listen to the music that they want.
Yeah.
And it sounds non-consequentialist, but I think consequences are baked right into it. It's all about what's gonna what's going to happen if you try to deny these people the freedom to do what they want, how much suffering that's going to cause to them in the first order, and then how much worse it's going to be for society when they try to find other illicit ways of getting what they want
Yeah.
instead. And I don't know, we should wind it down, I guess.
Yeah.
It's pretty sad right now, but
Yeah. Well, actually, I don't know if you saw Akash in the comments. I don't know if you have comments.
oh no,
up
I don't
right
have
now.
comments open. Yeah.
He came in about a half hour ago and said, so sorry, guys. I'm better, but can't join right now. Thanks, and hopefully we'll get another chance.
Yeah.
Have a bunch of questions. So he has a bunch of questions for you.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So yeah, so he seems to be doing better, but just not a good time to hop in, especially because now I think it's getting closer to
pretty
midnight
late.
where he's at.
I-
But I think he stays up late sometimes because I see him in comments when it's closer to like noon of my time.
Can
Or
I
yes,
say
your time.
just one thing first before
Yeah.
Akash's questions? And that's great to hear, Akash.
Oh,
You're
he's not
doing
going to
a
put
good
any questions in here. He's just saying
Oh,
he has a bunch.
he
but
did
then
for later.
But I think he's gone.
Okay.
But I did have one question for you with the comments here, but you should say the thing you were going to say.
Yeah, I wanted to say that there are these sort of kind of meta considerations. I think for a reasonable consequentialist, there are a lot of things that we recognize as having a very broad range of positive consequences or negative consequences that are hard to detail individually, but we can clearly see, for example, that a state of war produces very many extremely negative consequences on net, and the converse, like returning to peace, has very many diverse positive consequences, and so you can spell out some of them, but you can just look at examples of war and peace and see that there's an extremely strong presumption that we should try to avoid conditions of war and pursue the reestablishment of peace, without thinking that we have to go in and outline all of the more specific, more precise examples of suffering that happen in
My
wartime.
eyes are watering, but it's not because you're talking about war.
I'm making you cry. Bringing back your
My memories.
your soldiers' memories. So that influences a lot, and that's why I take the positions I do on a lot of issues, because I recognize the stability of a society, of a civil society that's relying on conversations, arguments, and the free flow of information, and that allows for a high degree of interpersonal conflict and on the sort of verbal level, intellectual, emotional level, and doesn't have it break out into open warfare, because I think it's very clear that a state of open war in a society is it's just broadly causative of lots and lots of negative consequences.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, that's a lot to think about. There's definitely, I'm going to go back through and take some notes because I think you make really good points, and I think there's a lot of crossover with consequentialism and deontology. And at the end of the day, like in a sense, it doesn't matter like a philosophy on its own. It's just like what we can take out of each different one. But there's
I
so much to
think,
talk about.
we're this core group is about promoting veganism as a very high ethical, you know, consideration or ethical imperative, and I think the consequentialist has a strong argument that this is the worst thing in the world, right? I don't think other ethical theories do. That number one, it's the worst thing in the world, and number two, that it's not good enough for us to just be individually and quietly vegan, but that it's very important for us to participate in outreach and activism and network and try to spread the message and spread the truth of what's going on in factory farms, because the consequences are just orders of magnitude worse than the worst atrocities in human history.
Yeah.
That's the key point. And other ethical theories, they're going to focus on, what did I actively do, or what was my intent, or whatever. I think they missed the mark. Yeah, I guess I disagree with that comment there. It's good to refer to animals with the same pronouns as humans when you're especially when you're aware of their gender, and call them they otherwise. But I don't think that our thoughts are determined by language, and in that way, I don't think that somebody who hasn't made that pronoun switch with non-human animals, that implies that they actually consider them the same as inanimate objects. I don't think that's how language works.
That's not. Yeah.
I mean, you just think about
I knew that you
the
were
average
very-
non-vegan. The average non-vegan would call, they would call like a squirrel it, but they would also think that somebody was a monster and that it was horrible if they just like kicked the squirrel to death for fun.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah. Or
so
babies. I call babies it.
They don't think, or somebody like had sex with a non-human animal or whatever, they consider that a horribly wrong thing to do. That's a typical non-vegan perspective. So no, they don't. Non-vegans, carnists, typically don't think of non-human animals as like inanimate objects. That's just not true. That's just psychologically false. What's actually going on is they know that non-human animals have internal experience, have sentience, and that's manifest in their views on how horrible bestiality or just like animal torture for fun is. And Melanie Joy is right about this. They just carve out an exception for the animals whose flesh they're used to eating. They carve out in their minds a meat exception to what they already know and what they already believe about the sentience of non-human animals.
Yeah.
That's what's going on with carnists.
Well,
Not that they consider non-human animals to be objects. Otherwise, because if somebody has sex with a non-human object, even if it's in a really weird way,
nobody's mad. Yeah.
yeah, nobody's mad at them, and nobody thinks that they need to go to jail. People just kind of look at them, give them side eye, like you like drilled a hole in your microwave and had sex with it or whatever. But people do see it as a very morally wrong thing. When it's a non-human animal, they already know it. They already have the right perspective towards animals. They just need to understand that that meat and dairy and things like this are not a morally justifiable exception to what they already know.
Yeah. Well, like,
which is
so
that
how
these are not objects.
Yeah. How I grew up using language, I guess I connected using the word it for anything that I haven't had contact with or can communicate with. So, like when somebody does like a gender reveal or something, they'll be like, "It's a boy." But even when there's a baby that like I'm not familiar with, there's just a baby over there. I'll call it an it. I'll just refer to any babies as, "Oh, it crawled across the floor," or something like that. because they can't communicate with me and I'm not familiar with this baby. Same thing where if like there's a person that's dead that I don't know that person and it's clearly, let's say, a male, adult male, and it's a dead body, maybe at a funeral or something, I'll say like it's like if somebody was talking about if it's moral or not to eat the flesh of a corpse of a human, I'd say yeah, like it's not alive, so it doesn't matter. I like once it's dead, it's an it to me. Where if it was alive, it's a he. So yeah, I don't know. I definitely don't think this is inaccurate use of language. But do you think that the language should change? Like, should the definition of it referring to animals change?
You mean in the dictionary? Should the
Sure. Yeah.
should
Yeah.
Well, dictionaries are supposed to be descriptive, not prescriptive. I don't think they always hold to that, but yeah, they're supposed to
Wouldn't they be
describe
the same
general
though?
usage.
So they're descriptive, but that would be if we wanted to use them accurately, then we'd view it as prescriptive.
It's not. I mean, people
we're
use
following what it
people use
says.
words the way they use words, and descriptive means that
Yeah.
you're describing what people went out and listened to uses of the language.
Well, you were saying
and
that
that's
your
what I would
average
hear people
person
say.
uses vegan referring to somebody that has the philosophy and the actions, not just the philosophy.
Yeah.
And you must also, not only is that the normal, but you must like it. Where there's things that I would change the definition of, not just veganism. So I'm just wondering if with it, because referring to an animal like a cat crosses the road, you could say it crossed the road. That would be the same as the vegan definition, where there is a normal, and the normal might be to call it it.
mean-
Are you personally thinking that you wished not only the dictionary definition, but that humans would change it up to where in the future it's looked at as it never happened?
I guess I don't care that much about that aspect. I just kind of predict that people will shift over to using the same pronouns with humans as with non-humans as they shift towards being vegan. And I think that tendency is just kind of like a reflection of people's consciousness as vegans, that they would tend to do that.
Would it always be they them then for animals seen in like documentaries or out in nature?
What do you mean? Would it be? Would it be
Like with what you're saying?
No, it's not a language. Like,
Okay.
Not
Well,
a
because
dictator.
well, no, I just mean like would that be your preference? Because there wouldn't be a he she unless you think it's reasonable when it comes to animals without knowing. If you want to like, because a lot of people will refer to dogs as he's and they'll refer to cats as she's.
Well, sure.
And there's animals that kind of have feminine vibes, and that's why people will. Or cars, people refer to as hers.
it was
like
really unusual with some children books I encountered when I first went to Korea. Some English children's books, and and they would have a family dog, and it would have, for example, a clearly male name like Bruno, and then they would refer to Bruno as it after Bruno was already named.
Oh, that's funny.
And I was telling the Korean teachers, like, I know, like, your official grammar maybe says that, he and she are for human males and females, and it is for animals and objects, but no American like this is or Western English speaking family like this would ever refer to their male named dog as it.
Yeah,
They would always say
no.
he. So it's just grammatically incorrect from the standpoint of trying to teach people how to speak English like English native English speakers really would. They wouldn't say look at Bruno, it's playing with its ball. That sounds like you have to be a non-native English speaker to say that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it is just used instead of the singular they, but a lot of people don't like singular they anyway for their own reasons, even though that's normal as well. But I don't.
I wish there was something like a singular they that wasn't connected to something plural. And I don't, and like aside from, the trans stuff or whatever.
Zer, yeah, Z.
But just like in this case, because I find that it happens all the time where somebody will be saying they referring to somebody, and if whenever it's talked about with somebody that doesn't go by those pronouns, it's really quick. It's just like it's said once about somebody that you don't normally talk about because you don't even know who you're talking about, or you're talking about hypothetical people, so you use they. Where if it's normally referred to as two or more people, then when you hear it, depending on the sentence, you're going to be thinking about two or more people. So I kind of just wish there was a gender neutral pronoun, and then there was they, them, and then there's he, she, or he, him. Although those could disappear. I don't even care if those disappear. But I feel like I do not want they, them to become like a singular norm. Unless we create a new set of pronouns for two or more people, and then they them could be only singular.
We do all right. Languages do all right with that without having all sorts of distinctions that other languages have. We do all right having the same word brother for your older brother and your younger brother, even though Korean has different words for those two.
Wait, what is it?
Korean has different words for an older brother versus younger brother, older sister,
really,
younger sister. And also for a
is it kind of like
a man's older sister is a different word than a woman's older sister.
What? That's crazy shit. They need to knock that off. You tell them right now.
But we have every languages have all sorts of distinctions that other languages don't have, and that doesn't prevent communication. It just doesn't work that way. The relation between language and thought is not that one directional and controlling of all. And the perfect example is calling non-human animals it when you don't know their sex, or even sometimes when you do. It doesn't like I think Grumpy Vegan Granddad here is implying, and some vegans have said, it doesn't mean that that carnists out there are thinking of non-human animals like inanimate objects because of the language. That's not justified by their behavior and their attitudes towards all sorts of other things that are not about like food or clothing from the animal industries. It's just plain as day that typical people in our society recognize the sentience of maybe not bugs, because nobody's gonna get super angry. A typical person in our society isn't gonna get super angry about somebody just going out and stepping on an ant or whatever.
But any mammal for sure.
Yeah, but somebody who is just like kicking a chicken to death for fun, or playing a game where we try to like kick this live chicken over a fence or whatever, like it's a soccer ball. Normal people in our society are going to be completely outraged by that. And and that shows that they already know, and that what's lacking for them in veganism isn't that the word it is causing them to not distinguish between non-human animals and objects. It's what Melanie Joy says, that the habit of eating meat and other animal products is so entrenched that it causes them to make an exception in their normal way of thinking, which does very clearly distinguish between animals and objects.
Yeah, definitely. So real quick, just to get your opinion on it, no wrong opinion here, unless you don't have my opinion. With this it thing, do you think vegans should knock it off? Because I get it all the time, and it's repetitive too. It's
what, criticizing other vegans?
Specifically like talking about like stop calling it. Like I'll do a post where I do like is it more moral to feed a cat or kill a cat or whatever, or to feed it or kill it, once I've asked the question. And then in the comments, nothing to do with what's being talked about, just it's not an it, it's a they, or it's a
Yeah,
person, or you
it
know.
seems like a waste of time to me. It's a nice little like extra thing to kind of include in your language, but that's not what's determining people's thoughts or feelings or
Yeah.
treatment of non-human animals. I don't
Maybe
believe
like a
that.
personal message, like an email or something saying, I think it would be best for the future of animals and goodness in the world if this didn't happen. I noticed it happened. No big deal. Take care. Something like that could try to encourage people to change their language if somebody really thinks it matters. Now, if I thought it mattered, I would personally change it. I used to draw twos where I do the loop in a straight line, and then I realized if I do a loop at the bottom, it looks so much cooler. So I've taught myself to do this. I could also teach myself to not say it, but I don't see the concern, so I'm going to
I
keep
mean,
up
you
with
can
it.
also point out, Carson, that the people who are, most directly exploiting non-human animals and probably most vociferously anti-vegan are people in animal ag industries who I'm pretty sure do use gendered pronouns. I'm pretty sure that dairy farmers do call their cows she.
Yeah, but I guess these people would say, okay, well,
And
at
bulls
least
he.
they'd say at least that's good, but everything else they're doing is bad. And so their focus
So that
might just be
doesn't manage to stop them, right? Calling their
Yeah.
cows she and the bulls he, it sure doesn't seem to stop them from abusing the fuck out of those animals.
Yeah. Oh man. Okay. Well. Anyways, yeah, it was a good talk, and I'll shoot you an email if I hear anything back from Akash, just to see how he's doing. But yeah, let's talk again soon, and I hope you have a good day.
Okay, dude, are you talking to Lewis later today?
Yeah, that's gonna be at 11, so in about an hour.
Oh, great! I'll be on commenting on that.
Oh, cool. Awesome. Sounds good. Take
Cool.
care, man.
See ya.
See ya.